Hi, my name is Stefan Gigach. I'm the Secretary of the Australian Cardine Institute. I'm here to talk to you today about a new book about the philosophy of Alphonse Gratry, the French philosopher of the 19th century. Actually, today few people have ever heard of Alphonse Gratry, so no doubt people will wonder what is his interest for us today. Actually, I mentioned that I'm from the Australian Cardine Institute, which of course is working to promote the work of Joseph Cardine, the founder of the Young Christian Workers movement. Cardine was one of those who was greatly influenced by Gratry, and in fact his See Judge Act method owes a great deal to Gratry's philosophy. Gratry was born in 1805, studied at the École Polytechnique. Initially, he was going to be a scientist. He ended up becoming a priest, worked closely with Frederick Ozanam, was to a certain extent radicalized by the events of 1848 in France, the Workers' Revolution, and wrote what came to be regarded as a manual for social action after that. Soon after, he went to work at the École Normale Supérieure as a chaplain and began to write theology and philosophy. Two things that are particularly interesting for us today from his philosophical work. First is his concept of reading the signs of the times, which of course is a biblical concept. What's interesting for us is the way in which he began to use it as a tool for reflecting on the reality of the world around him. He kind of used a threefold formula that we could express as God, man, and the world. And that were his 3 points of reflection. So he tried to see God's role in the world, man, or as we'd say today, humankind's role in the world, the connection between all three of those. And to do that, his concept was reading the signs of the times. He never used the term See Judge Act, but he did kind of use an expression, another threefold expression: reality, reflection, and resolution. Resolution in the sense of taking a resolution to act. This was adopted by one of his followers, another French philosopher, Léon Olly-Lebrun, who turned it into the phrase, see clearly, judge well, and resolve to take action. We can see the origin of Cardine's See Judge Act very clearly in those phrases. Sadly, Gratry fell out of favour due to a number of his positions, including opposing the Declaration of Infallibility at Vatican I, and he died shortly afterwards. Nevertheless, as I've said, his philosophy was taken up by a number of his followers and adopted as a method, first by a French movement called Le Sillon, a democratic movement started by Marc Sangnier during the 1890s, which in turn inspired Cardine and his method, which became the method not only of the Young Christian Workers movement, but also of many other specialized Catholic action movements. And even today, or more recently, it's been adopted by the Second Vatican Council and is adopted for example, by Pope Francis in his encyclical Laudato Si as a method for tackling the problems of today. Now, we're grateful here to have the new book published by ATF Press called Gratry's Philosophy, a translation of Julián Marías' Philosophy of Pere Gratry. The translation is by Mary Ella O'Hara, an American Josephite sister who sadly didn't live to see her book published. It's a great translation. She described it herself as a work of love. And Julián Marías gives us a magnificent outline of Gratry's philosophy. He wrote it during the 1940s. Marías was actually Spanish. Again, a good illustration of how Gratry was not a prophet in his own country, but his work was greatly appreciated elsewhere. And Marías, although of course he wrote it in the 40s, which is before Vatican II, so he doesn't make any reference to its future influence on the council. Nevertheless, it's a I would say as a book of philosophy, It's one of the more easily accessible books that you will read, and it provides a tremendous introduction to the work of philosophy of Alphonse Gratry's philosophy. So I really would like to recommend it to anybody, not just as an introduction to Alphonse Gratry, but as an introduction to the philosophy of Vatican II. Much work has been done on the theology of Vatican II. Today, however, much less has been done by researchers and scholars on the philosophy that lies behind the council. And I think it's an area that needs a great deal of work to come. It can be a great area of work for young researchers to take up. And Gratry's book, as translated by Mary Ella O'Hara, or I should say Marías' book about Gratry's philosophy, is a great introduction to that, and I would greatly recommend it to anybody. Thank you very much.